Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me once again on Cloud Chats. I'm Pat Martinez, and I'm with Leadership in the Clouds. Today, we are talking about grief and loss. Just want to do a disclaimer that if you find that you need professional help, please seek it. This is not the place for it. I will be joined by Roger, who is one of the members of our alliance. And Roger, thank you for joining me on Cloud Chats. If he's going to be turning on his camera shortly and introducing himself, and we'll be able to kick this off. Thank you, Roger.
Hey Pat, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I wanted to just let you introduce yourself first and take a couple of minutes and tell the folks that are going to be watching us here on Cloud Chats who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. My name is Roger Suclupe. I am a social worker. That's what I went to school to train as a social worker. I'm a licensed clinical social worker practicing here in the state of North Carolina. Um, I am also the BSW program director for the School of Social Work at UNC Charlotte, and I'm also a clinical associate professor. As Pat mentioned, I am mental health is my realm. This is what I went to school for. This is my passion. And yeah, I just want to have a conversation with y'all about grief and loss and emotional wellness and how we can navigate these spaces.
Thank you, Roger, for joining us. Can you just also you do grief counseling for kinder care?
Kindermorn. Yes, that's correct.
Kindermorn. Yeah.
Yes. So I have been affiliated with an organization here in Charlotte, North Carolina called Kindermorn. And Kindermorn provides grief support for individuals who've experienced loss of a loved one. Primarily now for the past, I would say, 7 to 8 years, I've been working with adults. So I've been working with parents who've experienced loss of prenatal loss or loss of a baby soon after baby was born. And then I also work with a set of parents who have experienced loss of a child who has been living some years. So it could be a 2-year-old, it could be a 12-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 42-year-old. Loss of a child is a loss of a child, no matter what the age. So,
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. And once again, for those of you that are joining us on Cloud Chats, I just want to say that if you're experiencing grief, please seek out help. This is just a conversation we're having with Roger to give you some nuggets of wisdom. But grief and loss are it's complex experiences, and many people have questions about them. Understanding grief involves exploring different aspects and exploring the process of grieving, the impact of losing an individual and how to cope and associate those emotions and challenges. We're not here as someone that's going to give you counseling. I think that, Roger, would you say that if somebody's experiencing deep grief or anxiety later, we'll talk about, they should really seek out professional help. The questions we'll be answering or talking, our conversation is just to highlight issues that you've been seeing.
yes, Pat, those are great points that you mentioned. So, grief and loss can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different folks, right? So we definitely have grief and loss when we experience that loss of a loved one. There's also different areas of grief and loss as well. You can grieve and lose the concept of a job or employment or fill in the blank, right? But my area of expertise has been grief and loss with losing a loved one, and so when we experience the loss of a loved one, we go through a plethora of emotions and feelings, and there's no right or wrong way to grieve, right? There is just whatever way works for that particular individual. Some individuals would benefit from seeking support, yes. It also depends on where on the timeline of their own grief they are.
Mhm.
I've worked with parents who experience the loss of a child, and then that week or the next week they are they're participating in some form of support. They may not be in the headspace to do that though, right? So it really just depends on that person. We always tell parents, we encourage them to go at it at their own pace, right? Sometimes folks get rushed into something and perhaps they're not in that space to do it at that moment. That's okay. Like I mentioned earlier, there's no right or wrong way. There's whatever way works for that person.
So, it's not a cookie cutter. Everybody
Right.
experiences grief and loss and reacts to it differently. My personal experience has been when we lost my father-in-law, my mother, and my mother-in-law for 3 years back to back.
Mm,
I had to be the one to keep the family together. So I broke down after the third person left, and I took my time in grieving, and it lasted 2 years, where
mhm.
somebody else may say, well, there's stages of grief that you go through. Can you explain the stages of grief and what to expect or what the norm is out there that people usually say?
Yeah, absolutely. So there may be some folks who are familiar with the stages of grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had indicated, the stages of grief. Um, the reality of the stages is with grief and loss, in particular, when we're talking about the grief and loss of a loved one, we don't go through stages because stages means that we leave one stage to get to the next, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, denial. Uh, Again, I'm going back to the loss, working with parents who experience the loss of a child. They will they will always be in denial, right? It's almost like they will almost always wake up thinking like this didn't really happen. It did happen. So there's that concept of like you're not going to be in denial, right? It's because it's unimaginable what happened. Like a parent does not ever think that they're going to outlive their child. So it's one of these unimaginable things which leads to a moments of denial. And denial doesn't mean that you're going to be in denial for 24 hours.
Right.
You could be in denial for a second, for a minute. Again, grief is very different for each one of us. Um, parent, a parent is always going to, a parent may feel angry a lot, and that's okay. There's not going to be a moment in time where they're not going to be angry about what happened. And it's natural to feel that because again, as parents, there isn't this concept of we're going to outlive our children. It's unnatural. It's unimaginable, right? So when we're looking at the stages, the way Lauren is my facilitator at Kindlemore, and the way we help parents navigate that space is that grief is not linear, right? So it's not you have to go from point A to point B, and then if you take a step back, it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong because there's again no right or wrong way to do it. Uh, Grief is if you think of a timeline or you just think of like a line, and some folks think of grief as you have to go from this point to this point to this point to this point, and then you get here and you're good. Like that's not how it works. It's those points are all over the place, right? So because, one day you may feel sadness and the next day you might not feel that sadness as heavy, right?
Mm.
You may feel more anger. So it's points on a piece of paper that are just sort of all over the place, and
Do
that's
you ever
okay.
snap back from the anger or depression part, those stages that you mentioned with, I
Right.
think, Dr. Ross
Uh, well,
talked about? It's
well, Kubler-Ross had the
Ross.
concept of the stages of grief.
Right. But
And really,
what I questioned to you was, do you think that people snap back to denial once they're in anger, or they go through these different points that you talked about? It's
right.
different in the stages. Can we snap back and just say, I just don't believe this happened?
Yes, absolutely. So again, because it's not linear, right?
Mm.
Because if it is linear, it means that you wouldn't go back to this denial portion of it. You will, there are moments that you may wake up or a parent may wake up and think like, this really didn't happen. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it did happen. Um, so think of it as bubbles, right? And
Mm.
so the denial part of it may be a big bubble one day, right? But then 3 days later, it might be just a very small bubble. And so it just ebbs and flows as individuals navigate through that.
So
Because
there's no time commitment
there's no
to
time.
grief.
Like, no, whether it's one day, 2 weeks, 5 years,
Mm.
25 years,
Mm.
that person will always have love for the individual that they lost. And because of that loss, and because of that love they have, which is infinite, there will always be a part of them that will feel sad that that person's not physically there or
So it's okay
angry.
to grieve.
It's definitely okay to grieve. And it's okay. to feel like you can do it your own way. Like there, you said it earlier, there's no cookie cutter way to do this.
Mhm.
And some folks may be led to believe that there is, and
Mhm.
there's really not, because we're all different individuals.
What happens in a cultural aspect, as Latinos, I know that some people will say to you, oh, snap out of it,
Hmm.
get over it. It's not so big. So for example, when we talk about loss of human beings, babies and stuff, but the loss of a pet, the loss of a job, people tell you to get back on the horse. When you fall off the horse, get back right on and just ride off. They expect you to snap back. They give you time limits. People will allow you 3 days to bereavement, which I find is exceptional for companies to even give you 3 days. But you may come back to work and still feel not right. There's
Yeah.
something wrong. There's a missing part of you.
Hmm.
And does that does that grieving process and no time limit, is it okay, especially for young folks that are
Hmm.
going through a grieving process, being separated from loved ones, or just as they see their parents pass away? Is it okay to feel that loss? And how do you get back? How do you get
Right.
back? How do you bounce back?
That's a great question, Pat. So it really depends on like the circumstances and situations, and it also depends on the support that the individual had before this happened too, right? So we are aware that having support is very crucial, especially during challenging moments and times, right? So when we're looking at grief and loss, having that support system around you before experiencing that is helpful, extremely helpful. You have avenues, you have individuals that you can reach out to, not for them to talk to you, but just to have somebody to sit in that space with you, right?
Mhm.
Again, the misconception at times, we as human beings, I might feel like, oh, well, Pat's feeling sad or Pat's grieving, so let me go talk to Pat. Really, did I ask you, Pat, I'm here for you, and if you just need me to sit next to you and not say anything, that's what I'll do, right?
I've had friends that just say that, what I need right now is just someone to sit with me.
I just need
And
somebody to sit with me.
you have
Hmm.
coffee, or you sit by the lake, and you say
Anywhere.
nothing. Just
Yeah.
the fact that you're keeping them close
Yep.
is
It's
enough.
that closeness and proximity. And so it's definitely natural to feel sadness when you're experiencing grief and loss. It's definitely natural to have some anger about why this happened, right? It's definitely natural to feel like there's no way I can accept that this happened. It's natural. Those are natural things. And so you asked about how do people bounce back.
Hmm.
Um, so I look at it this way. Before the loss, right? And I'm gonna take it back to experiencing the loss of a loved one, right? And kind of even putting it even in a more the context that I'm been working with now for the past number of years, parents, right? Um, Before they experienced that, they were that person. After, they are a totally different person. They are not the same person. And other people around them, whether it's work, whether it's friends, whether it's family, unless they've been through that, they can't understand it. And so there's this expectation of bouncing back, right?
Hmm.
Or they misjudge things at times. They might see that parent smile at something, smile, I don't know what, or maybe chuckle, and they might say, "Oh, you're back." Like, "Oh, it's so
Yeah.
good to have you back." That
Misconception
it's a
altogether.
misconception. Like it almost makes that parent feel like, "Oh my gosh, I can't smile or laugh anymore because people are going to think that I'm better." And it's not about getting better. It's about now that parent or that person who has experienced loss is learning how to navigate life without the individual that they loved,
Hmm.
right? Does that make sense? So that's why having a support system is important. And it's not about how folks bounce back, it's how folks can navigate this new world that they're living in now without the person that they love, right? How do they navigate that new world and seek different types of supports to still keep the ones that they've had, but seek other types of supports that can understand sort of their plight, their journey now, because it is a new journey. One of the
When
great
does it
things
become
about
complicated to the point that it impacts the life, when
Hmm.
is it too long and that you have to turn around and say, this grief is lasting, or this feeling of loss is
Hmm.
turning into something. I'm a little concerned with my behavior. If you see someone that
Right.
is grieving for too long a period of time, they can't function, you find them
Right.
falling apart. When do you
Yeah.
seek help?
That's a great question, Pat. So again, I'll go back to say there is no timeline for grief and loss, like for grieving, right? The concern would be though if the person is if it's impacting their like daily life in the sense of they like work, relationships, social, emotional, like all of that. Can be really concerning. Again, if an individual is having thoughts of harm, like those are we do want to make sure that not that doesn't happen. I'm saying
Mhm.
it's something that's going to happen, but with any situation, we want to just make sure that we do a risk assessment, right? That we want to make sure that the individual has knowledge and awareness of not only self-care, but how to seek out care for themselves. So when we're looking at how do we help address folks who need a little bit deeper or more support, I would say that the reality is we, reducing the stigma of seeking out help and support, right? So,
Yeah.
and that it's definitely okay to feel this sadness, to have depression, to have anxiety because of your this person's life is now changed forever. Um, and seeking that help and support will guide them or help them navigate this new world now that they are passing through these avenues and relationships without the person that they love, right?
There are cycles of life that we expect. You expect your parents to pass on.
Right.
You expect your some things to go awry. You never really, for those people that are living in a bubble of saying nothing can go wrong, this isn't the conversation for you. But those people that are saying the other side of the coin is those people that are always thinking the other shoe's going to drop. I see a
Mm,
parent getting older. How do we prepare ourselves for the day that they're no longer there? Or, I mean, it's very horrible. It's horrible to think that a child will go before a parent, but
right.
things are never certain in life. But let's talk about parents, older parents. How do we prepare ourselves to be without parents one day? Or is
Right.
there a way of preparing ourselves?
Well, that's a great question because that's the other side of this. So, myself, and thank you for sharing yourself earlier about experiencing back to back to back losses. Parental loss is challenging. A lot of that also can depend on the type of relationship you had with your parents, right? But regardless, it's still challenging. I myself,
Mhm.
my beautiful, incredible mother, Norma Suclupe, passed away March 8th of 2021 due to COVID. And so, so wow, we're going on now. It's been 4 years, a little bit over
Yeah.
4 years, and I'm still I'm still struggling with some of that because my mother was this pillar of our family. She and my dad were married for 53 years. So there's yeah, 50 might have been 55 now that I'm looking back. So there's all these different
Yeah.
things that I get angry about and I get sad about. And um, we
Do you ever
weren't pre
feel that you should have said something? Like you go
um,
back and you say, I wish she was here so I could tell her.
there are moments when I say, I go back to the last conversation I had with her, right? And I sort of have that embedded in my brain. It's almost like a tape player, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have it, I can play it in my head and still remember. My hope is that I still can have that 20 years from now, right? 25 years from now, I can still have that in my head. But so we didn't know. I mean, when she got COVID, we actually thought she was going to get better. And then things kind of took a turn for the worse and she passed away. So it was expectantly unexpected, if that makes sense. Like, we knew she was sick. We were hoping that she would get better. There was a part of me that like expected something might happen, but again, because we thought she was getting better, it became unexpected. So now, my siblings and I have conversations with my father about. So going back to your question is like, how do we manage some of that? Is if we do have a living parent, being okay with having those it's a it's a it's a grim conversation, right? It's a
Yeah, it is
challenging, but it's also unavoidable.
part of life.
It's part of life. And so how do we prepare ourselves is by having that conversation with a parent who is, or your parent, both parents, if they're still, alive, whatever, inevitably it's going to happen. So how do we work together from everything from finances to, you know, what do you like, where do you want to be buried? Like everything, like how do you want to be, like all of that is our conversations that we should have. We as a society, I feel like we are deaf avoidant, right? So we don't
Yeah.
have those types of conversations because the reality is like, who wants to talk about death, right? But it
Well, you do
is
have to prepare these days with
right,
like where do you want to be buried?
right,
Little things. And I know we're going off a little bit more on the grief, but part of grief, I feel, is if once you're prepared, it's like being, getting ready for a combat because you're combating the feelings that are going to come to you and you don't know who's going to react, how they're going to react.
right.
You could expect your siblings all to be strong, but you may have to be the one that stands straight and let everybody lean on you.
Right.
So part of preparedness is knowing the personalities. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I would think that going through a grieving process as I did, um, I always found humor to snap me out of it.
Hmm.
And I think the funniest thing that happened to us was when my mother passed. She passed February 15th, and the next day was my sister's birthday. She passed the day after Valentine's Day. I said to her, "You always had timing," in my head because I'm saying, good thing she didn't pass on February 14th. But I remember the last time she gave me a kiss and a hug before she took to bed, and she said, "I don't think I want to wake up anymore. I'm done." Which she knew. She said, "I'm
Hmm.
done." But I think when laughter took over was we were watching videos. I found an old video and my mother was there with the kids and she did something really funny because she didn't want to wear undergarments. She was hot and she lifted up her shirt to say, "Oh my God, it's hot, it's hot." And everybody went, and you could just imagine how we all shut it off and then laughed. But at dinner time that night, that was the conversation. We laughed and we started remembering all the kooky things that our
Hmm.
grandparents did. And
Yeah.
the kooky things kind of left us feeling, wow, we're lucky that we had them in our life. So
Yeah.
even if you just don't have them around, I think remembering is very important in the grieving process. Wouldn't you agree?
It's extremely important. And remembering and honoring the individual is key. One of the things that again, somebody who um, experiences loss is they're afraid that other people are going to forget, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you yourself will never forget, but one of the fears is that, oh my gosh, other people are going to forget. Again, particularly in working with parents who've experienced the loss of a child, like their fear is like other people are going to forget my child because their children, like the other people whose children are alive, they're going to continue on with those milestones that my child wasn't able to go through, right? And so that's really hard. For me, the way my family, not just my siblings, my kids and my wife and my sisters and brother and cousins, like we do remember my mom through embedding her in certain conversations. Like we'll say like, oh, what would mom do? Or like, remember that time? And it's just that's how we continue the legacy of the individual that we lost and we love because we I don't want to say loved because that's like I will always love my mother.
Yeah.
Never it'll never be a ED. It'll always be a love. So that's this concept of past, present, and future. I challenge folks to think about it from the perspective of you will never not love that person. So don't say loved or lived. Like they still live. My mom still lives in me. Like my
In your
mom,
heart and your soul
right.
and your mind, yeah.
Yeah.
And your
So
children, because they
exactly.
carry the DNA.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
another
And
conversation altogether. In the closing moments that we have, we talk about grieving a person, grieving a child, but also in this day and age, we have a lot of young folks that follow me on and they listen to Cloud Chats. And I will say the Cloud Chats will be on our YouTube channel for everybody that wants to know. You'll be able to listen to it in its entirety if you had to jump off. But I also want to talk about the loss of jobs, or the
Mhm.
loss of expectations, because a lot of our young people have certain expectations and they're feeling anxiety.
Mhm.
And that's another subject altogether. But part of the grieving process, I find that some people feel there's a loss of, I don't know, they just don't see their future. They really don't. And
Mhm.
that's scary to me because I always used to say, well, just put your goals together. That's what we teach, put together your action plan, your blueprint for life. But young people are not seeing it. They're not seeing a future. And
Mhm.
you have a lot of them saying, I don't know if I want to have children because there's no future for them. And I think
Mhm.
that's a grieving process in itself. I grieve because I may never have grandchildren. But I
Mhm.
just wanted to touch base on the anxiety portion before we close out Cloud Chats. Just I know if, again, anybody listening to us, if you're feeling anxiety and you feel that it's uncontrollable, seek professional help because we're not here to replace that at all. But I do know, Roger, you have some nuggets of wisdom to address anxiety, and I just wanted to get them from you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pat. You're right. Seeking professional help is always helpful. If an individual feels like it is the path that they want to take. The other thing is, it may not be for everyone at that moment either, right? And so just knowing yourself, knowing what your needs are as an individual, and seeing who can support you in that capacity is what I encourage folks to think about. Anxiety is normal, right? Anxiety is okay. I think without anxiety, there would have been moments when if I didn't experience anxiety over something, I might have made a bad decision. Does that make sense? So I want to preface all this by saying that anxiety is not a bad thing. I think anxiety has probably saved people at times, right? From making a decision that they should have made or doing something they didn't want to do, etc. So, um, but anxiety can be overwhelming as well. And so the concern at times is if the anxiety or the feelings of anxiety takes over or takes precedent over things that a person should be navigating, right? So whether it is um, uh, engaging with other people, working, learning, absorbing, being, taking care of themselves, like that's when we start to think, okay, maybe we need to see how we can support this individual in a different capacity. But anxiety is not a bad thing. I will say that there are a lot of pressures that we all have, and particularly now with young folks. There's pressures to perform, there's pressures to complete, there's pressures to get a good paying job, etc. Right? There's even pressures like go to school, right?
Yeah.
You have to go to university, you have to go to college, you have to get a career, etc. And what we have to think about how we address that with young folks and what are we saying to them versus what are they hearing, right?
Mhm.
Like if we're saying you have to do this, then they're hearing, oh my gosh, if I don't get this done, then I'm a failure, right? They
Mhm.
could be hearing that. We need to change the vernacular of how we say things, right? So college is available. Let's say that. Like that is college is something that is available. Now, is college for everyone? Well, that's a loaded question. College is available. College may not be for everyone at that moment of their life, if
Yeah.
that makes sense,
And not
right? So again,
accessible.
or not accessible. So again, think about it as it's not linear. We have seen an increase in what's called non-traditional students, which means like a student who isn't graduating from high school and immediately starting college the next, that in 4 or 5 months. We are seeing folks who graduate from high school and maybe go to community college or just take a break.
Mhm.
And then they're coming back to school or they're going to start school for the first time, 4, 6, 8 years later. That's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You know, learning happens at any point of life, right?
Mhm.
So whether you're 18 and graduating high school and going to go to college in 3 months, or you're 28 and stepping on campus for the first time, or you're 55, like there's no, so
Yeah.
taking all this back
I
to what
know
you
that
just said
it's a
about
little
it.
bit oversharing, but I was older when I went to college and I passed as a young blood because I didn't want anybody to know my age. But this day and age, you find people returning to school and it's okay.
Hmm.
Meeting expectations is causing anxiety for some people because I think they're superimposed by parents, parents that have these expectations. I know we're going a little bit longer on our cloud chats, Roger. I hope you can stay with us a little bit longer. For those of you listening, this is a longer version of cloud chats. We usually do 30 minutes, but I think this conversation is important. And Roger's always running, and I want to capture him now for his nuggets of wisdom, because anxiety is something that I see, and people ask me all the time. We do leadership training, we do emotional intelligence. When we get to stress management, and people see, oh my gosh, they say, I have no stress. Then they get their assessment and they see they're off the charts. They have
Mhm.
elevated levels of stress, and they
Mhm.
said they didn't even realize that. And then they use their emotional intelligence. We teach them how to use their emotional intelligence to counteract their stress management. But there's an underlying issue here with younger people under 28. I would say under 30, but under 25. But I'm finding it under 30, that their anxiety is off the charts because of what's happening globally. It's
Mhm.
the external factors that are hitting them hard because they don't see a future. What would you say to those folks
Mhm.
that feel that anxiety ridden, and being a college professor, university professor
Mhm.
yourself? What would you say to your students?
I would say that first, if they have acknowledgement and awareness, that's a great thing, right? So, one of the first things is to be aware and acknowledge like there's something going on. Like
Mm,
I'm not feeling like myself or something's a little bit off. That's a great thing. Like if you have that awareness, excellent. The next thing is I would say, um, you know, globally, like things that happen around the world does have an impact on us, right? However, there are things that happen around the world that I, sitting right here in this space, am not going to be able to address, or I'm not going to be able to fix that, right? However, I can look at what is going on around my local community, right? That will help me be part of the change that could help something global. Does that make sense? So maybe I would say it would be key. And self-care could mean a plethora of things. I think folks like naturally navigate the self-care as like exercise, and that's not necessarily true. Self-care could be reading a book that
taking
has
time out. Yeah.
taken time away. Self-care doesn't have to be 4 hours. It could be like, you know what? I just need to take a 15-minute stroll. I just need to disconnect for 15 minutes. It could be a number of things. Utilizing the resources that are around you to help you with self-care is key. Self-care doesn't mean like go take a bubble bath or like go, that's just not it. It could be so much more. Self-care is whatever that person can find and do that will help reduce that anxiety and get them back to base level, right? Or get them back to a place where they can, okay, I can take that next step now,
Yeah.
right? It's okay to slow down. It's
Yeah.
okay to slow down and not be at that accelerated pace. Does that make
So,
sense?
so anxiety and self-care, all and grief and loss, everything comes under the umbrella of wellness. Keeping
Yes.
yourself well in situations that are disruptive, unexpected, maybe even things that are expected. Sometimes we prepare ourselves for something and it happens and we say, "But I knew this was happening. What's going on with me? What's wrong with me?" I hear a lot of
Hmm.
people saying, "What's wrong with me?" And I say, there's nothing wrong with you. You just reacting the way that you normally would react. And, everybody's different. So wellness has a very broad area. I believe in self care. People say I drive myself a lot. I do work a lot. I do travel a lot. However, when I say I'm taking time off, I binge on Netflix and I watch TV. That's the way I
Hmm.
find self care. Or I go out, or I go dancing and I spend time with my family. I like to cook. But whatever it
Hmm.
is, what you're saying, if I hear you correctly, besides, if you find that you're going through these emotions, it's okay. But find
Hmm.
a way that works for you. It's not a cookie cutter. Again, I go back to that. It's just whatever works for you and your family, whatever you can do to make sure that you're okay.
Exactly. Absolutely. There's no right or wrong way to self-care. There's a healthy way to self-care, and whatever way that is, and it works for you, then that's great.
So Roger, I do want to thank you for being on the show today, talking with me about grief and loss, and then going into anxiety. We weren't going to talk about it, but I figured I'd capture you, and it just seemed to go with the flow of the conversation itself. But I would like to invite you back to have a conversations in the round about wellness,
Of
self-care,
course.
and this mounting issue that I find that young folks are finding themselves in the business world, because either they're striving to survive and COVID is behind us, but some people are still in the COVID mindset. How do we snap them out of that? So I do invite you back to be part of Conversations in the Round for a longer conversation on this topic. And hopefully we'll
Of
be able to
course.
have it. But I want to thank
Of
you for
course.
giving me your time today. Thank you for being on board. And thank you for everything you do. And for those watching, Roger is available. You could reach him through our alliance on our website, leadershipintheclouds.com. He's a member of the LITC Alliance, correctly?
Suclupe.
There we go. I have a hard time saying his last name. I've been practicing it, but no matter what you do, I know how to spell it. But it's Roger to us. So thank you all for joining us on Cloud Chats. Thank you, Roger, for taking time out. And you'll see us in the clouds. To see all our videos on Cloud Chats, Conversations in the Round, you can go through our website or you can go to YouTube channel, leadershipintheclouds.com. Stay well, everyone.